Good afternoon. I'm Heather with the Institute of Child Nutrition, and I'd like to welcome you to the August 2024 CACFP 101 webinar, Growing Your Professional Network in the CACFP Community. During today's webinar, all attendees will be muted. Questions can be asked by typing them into the question box on your screen. We'll try to answer as many as possible, but not all may be addressed due to time constraints. Please use the QA box only for questions for the presenter. And after the webinar, a link to a short survey will appear. Completing this survey helps ICN plan future webinars. Registered individuals will receive a follow-up email within 24 hours containing a recording link on iLearn, which is ICN's online platform. And again, the survey link in case you missed it the first time. Webinar certificates will be emailed within 24 hours as well. Note that the slide deck won't be shared today. The webinar will be available only in video format within the iLearn. So by the end of this webinar, we hope that you will learn some networking strategies for connecting with other CACFP professionals and tips for building genuine relationships with colleagues. Also, create networking goals that match your career objectives. Identify strategies to build connections that align with your professional goals. The views and opinions expressed in this webinar are solely those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Institute of Child Nutrition. Today we have Jody Kuhn. She is the Director of Regulatory Compliance for the KinderCare Learning Company, also known as KLC, which she oversees their participation in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. KLC is the largest private childcare provider in the U.S., serving over 200,000 children across 40 states and the District of Columbia. With almost 800 centers participating in the federal food program across 33 states, KLC is the largest for-profit sponsor, serving more than 2 million nutritious meals and snacks each month through the CACFP. Managing the largest private nationwide participant in the program, she has the perspective of working with many state agencies and sharing best practices across the country. Jody is a member of the National CACFP Forum Board of Directors and has participated on multiple national work groups, including the USDA's Paperwork Reduction Work Group, the Technical Assistance and Guidance Group, and the Institute of Child Nutrition's CACFP National Advisory Committee. She has a degree in psychology and child development, a master's degree in nutrition education, and has over 25 years of experience in process improvement, training development, and program management. ICN is super excited to have Jody here today. So without further ado, we would like to welcome her to today's webinar.
Heather, thank you so much for asking me to join in. I'm super grateful for this opportunity to participate. I am going to share my presentation really quickly. All right, do the slides look okay? Am I in the right spot? Excellent, thank you so much, Heather. Like I said, I am super grateful for the opportunity to have this work with ICN today. And I'm always grateful for the opportunity to engage with the CACFP community in any way. Today, as Heather mentioned, we're going to talk about growing your professional network in the CACFP community. Before we jump in, we're going to start with a couple of polling questions so that we can get a feel for the experience we have with all of the people joining us today. So I believe in we're going to be able to see a couple of polls pop up. For the first question, we're going to see how many of you have, and there's multiple choice, have you signed up for the CACFP related newsletters? Any of them, any that you've seen, and then actually read them. There are so many. I know we all get a ton of emails all the time, but CACFP newsletters from different organizations is a great way to stay connected. So how many of you have done that? How many of you have attended an in-person CACFP meeting or training offered by a state agency? And then how many of you have attended a CACFP conference? So take a minute and answer the poll. We'll give everybody a chance to log their answers. Excellent. We'll see the results. Awesome. It looks like our group is pretty connected, which is a great place to start. Super solid foundation. So, newsletters, we have about 75% of you have already signed up for some form of CACFP newsletter. We'll talk about more opportunities and where that you stay connected in a little bit. Attended a CACFP meeting in person, whether it's a training through the state agency or sponsoring organizations, and attending a conference. Those are options as well. We'll talk about all of those more in a little bit, but it's helpful to see where we started. Okay, the next poll talks about more about social media. So, which social media channel do you use as your primary source for CACFP networking? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn, Instagram, or maybe something else is out there that you use? So take a minute and record your response, and we'll see which social media it is. And it's the way that people stay connected nowadays with social media. So let's see what is out there. Excellent. Okay. And the results are showing us that we have other ways. Mostly, but a lot of Facebook. There are some great CACFP Facebook groups that help people stay connected. LinkedIn is also another great way to, especially as you're looking for specific mentorship or other specific people in the group, or that could be a mentor in the CACFP community. LinkedIn is awesome. Instagram has always been my source for information when it comes to nutritious meals. There's some great pictures out there on Instagram. That's always fun as well. So awesome. If you aren't connected yet, we'll talk more about ways to stay connected. But I just want to see, based on all the years of experience and the wide diversity of participants so far, where we are. Thank you so much. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started with our learning objectives. As Heather said at the beginning, through this webinar, we are going to explore networking strategies for connecting with other CACFP professionals. And sprinkled throughout my time with you, I hope to share some tips for building genuine relationships with colleagues. It's such an important part of networking. And so we'll talk about those. We'll also talk about creative ways for creating networking goals that match your career objectives. And we'll also identify strategies to build connections that align with your professional goals. So before we get started with the how, let's start with the why. And I'll start with my why. So I joined KinderCare 19 years ago, and I knew absolutely nothing about CACFP. I had some experience with rules and regulations and how to follow regulations and how to read very sometimes dry rules and regs, but it was in a different industry. So I was starting from scratch. I had also just relocated from California to Oregon, and I bought my first house. So truly, everything was new to me. The person who hired me at KinderCare had a lot of experience in the CACFP, and another woman on my team who managed the claims process, she also knew a lot about CACFP, but both of them left very shortly after I joined. And so I found myself with very few internal resources. I was tasked with leading a team and helping to run CACFP for KinderCare, and very few resources to go to. I started with what was immediately available to me. I did have a team of very passionate monitors for the food program with a wide range of experiences at the central level. And these women, my team was all made up of women at the time, showed me the ropes. And they showed me the importance of and the impact that CACFP had on KinderCare's ability to provide nutritious meals and support quality care for children and families who otherwise would not normally be in our care. And so from that time, I was hooked. I fell in love with the CACFP, but I knew there was so much I didn't know. Something was missing. There was so much to learn about the program, and it wasn't going to come from internally at my company. KinderCare is the largest CACFP sponsor of affiliated centers. Back then, we had about 500 centers participating in 34 states. So there is a ton to learn. There was a ton to learn and to know. And I had a lot of these state level experts on my team, but I started to figure out that there was more. There was support and resources that were available at the national level. There was activity and advocacy that was going on at a regional and a national level that I hadn't been exposed to before. And with the scope of our work covering as much territory as we did, this is where I needed to be, but I had to figure out how to get there. Within my first year, I was also faced with another challenge. We had some really difficult audit findings from a state agency. And this is in a program that I was still learning with a team that I was still getting to know. And the state had some very difficult findings, very serious findings that we had to respond to very quickly. So, for many reasons why networking is important, for me, it started with a need to gain access and resources and understand a brand new program very, very quickly. I needed to learn how to navigate these difficult situations with the state agency and my team, but I also needed to understand how the federal regulations worked as well. And I needed to connect with other people who could help me gain access to the resources that I just didn't even know at the time were available. So after a while, I realized that I could also have a greater impact on KinderCare and KinderCare's role in the community and how we supported CACFP and our families. So I used my network connections over time to learn about all aspects of the program, not just my role, not just the role of an affiliated center the way we were, but the whole aspect of the program. And that really grew into how I can help CACFP be a stronger program that many organizations can take advantage of and many families and children can benefit from. I learned the best ways to be able to stay up on industry trends, learn about new software, learn about what's working for others. And I was able to introduce those things and those opportunities to KinderCare in my company, which expanded our participation in the program. We were able to reach more families and more children. And at this point, we have now almost 800 centers participating in the food program, still across 30 something states. And I have a team of members, my team members, who are also leading in the community. I have one that serves on a national board and in work groups. I have others who participate in state level work groups and associations. And all of that networking has helped build KinderCare's reputation in the CACFP community, which then opens up a ton of opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise have had. I know Heather mentioned it, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have had in the past to work on several work groups. I was on the paperwork reduction work group, and I just owe it all to the power of networking, being able to connect and meet with people in this amazing community. And if I hadn't made that effort at the very beginning to get to know others, to intentionally build up KinderCare's reputation in the CACFP community, and along the way to offer whatever I can offer, help wherever I could, I wouldn't have been selected for those work groups or even to be in this session right now. It's such an honor to be able to help promote a program that has such a positive impact. So that's my why. And through these networking, I think the most important and impactful part for my life is I've made some genuine connections that will truly last a lifetime. In a time in my life back then where everything was new, I started to build my network for support, continue to be an important part of my life, both my CACFP work and just in life in general. And I'm just so forever grateful. Through this networking, I've also been able to pay it back and invest in others as they join the CACFP community, and that's where I am today. I love meeting new people to the community, new people who want to learn more about CACFP. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about you being here and looking for a way to expand your own network. It's such an exciting and the program is so amazing, and to be a part of it is awesome. So any way that we can help, any way that I can help, please reach out. I'm happy to. It feels good to be able to help make connections for others as well and see people be successful as they're starting on their own journey. Overall, learning from others helps build your confidence and connect you to the support and the resources you wouldn't otherwise have. I didn't have within my organization to start with. And it can help have a big impact on your success at work and then in general your own personal fulfillment throughout your work career and beyond. Oh, wait, I jumped around a little bit. So we talked about why networking is important. Let's talk about the key components of successful networking. So we talked about the why. Now let's talk about the how. Before you jump into action, just signing up for things or going to networking events or meeting people in the community, it's really important to have a plan. The CACFP community, once you dig in, is full of opportunities, lots of people, and it can seem a little overwhelming. You want to start off with some clear, specific goals. In order to set some goals and what you want to get out of networking, start with your career objectives. My immediate goal back when I first started was to resolve the situation I was having with the state agency and our difficult findings. But I also wanted to learn more about the CACFP in other states and understand what the difference was between different states and why some states did it a certain way and other states didn't. What does it mean to have federal regulations and state interpretations? And then also to understand if there were other organizations similar to mine and how they were similar or how they were different, just to see where I fit into the whole puzzle. Those were my initial career goals. Now, my goals, after almost 20 years, look a little different. My goals for networking now are to promote this amazing program. I want everybody and their brother and sister to know about CACFP and to support it and to find ways to expand access to every eligible family and child. I want to help others be successful in this program. I found it to be super intimidating at the beginning. The rules and regulations can be confusing and overwhelming and intimidating and scary. There are some big words in there like serious deficiency and 7 years, all this stuff. And it doesn't have to be that way with some support and encouragement and those who can help you navigate through the program and the requirements. So in order to, my goals now, as I was mentioning, is just to really expand access to the program and to help others be successful and find a place where they love as well and find that support. Next up is to identify opportunities to connect with others. So now you already know what your career goals are and what you want to get out of networking. Now take a step, and you've already taken one step. You are here. You're at this webinar to learn more about networking. That's an amazing first step. Great job. Then you want to start locally. Are there opportunities to attend state trainings, either in person or everything's virtual nowadays, and we got to get used to our virtual world? Are there opportunities to meet other sponsors in your state? Is there a sponsors association or network? If not within the state, there are also several national organizations who are passionate about helping the CACFP community stay connected to each other and what's going on in the industry. Those are the areas where you can sign up for their newsletters and look for opportunities to participate and interact with those organizations and their members. I'm not providing any specific links. I'll mention some a little bit later, but it truly is as easy as Googling or searching for CACFP organizations. There are several great ones. Again, I'll mention a few later, but I don't want to promote any one in particular, but it's just such a great community. Also, it's important to remember a key component of successful networking is that keeping in mind that it's a two-way street. You have a lot to offer. Even if you're new or relatively new to the CACFP, your role, the community. Be ready to share your experiences and recognize that you have a lot to bring to the table, even from past experiences in a different industry or a different world. Shared experiences are the connection for meaningful, lasting connections and relationships. So be ready to not just listen to learn, but listen to support others as you're talking to them. That connection will really help build those long lasting that network of resources for you. And to do that, active listening is a critical skill. Um, Without going into too much detail, communication is so important. Just a reminder, active listening is something that helps you feel and seem like you're engaged, you're being respectful. It's very likely that more people are willing to listen to you if they're feeling like their ideas are being heard and understood, and you're engaged and interested in them, asking great questions, repeating what they're sharing, digging in a little. So instead of always focusing on what you're trying to get out of the conversation, be sure it is a back and forth and that you're sharing your engagement and excitement for what the person you're talking to is interested in. So uh, look for opportunities to build relationships at all levels. So again, I when I first started was in a very specific role, and that's where I started. But the more I learned, I started to reach out and understand more about home care providers and about schools and all different aspects, before and after school programs, all aspects that were outside of my direct area of expertise, because you can truly learn something from everyone. And you can be the person that helps make connections for other people as they're learning to network in this environment. So you're offering that back as well. The more people you know, the more connections you can help other people make as well. So be noticeable as well. Once you find your networking opportunities, you can't just participate one time and expect to get everything you need to know from that one event or that one opportunity in person. Regularly attending networking events, in this case, it would be conferences or trainings or meetups, and staying connected after the fact is so important. The more people see you at these events, the more they're aware of you, the more you are going to be in a position to receive the help and the information you need and help make those connections. So, one little tip here, remember people's names. It's so difficult for me. I always challenge myself to not only use people's names, but remember them year to year when you only see some people once a year. So I personally have to take lots of notes and write down reminders and stay connected so that again I can have that more authentic, engaging interaction with people so that hopefully I am more memorable to them as well. So using names, super important little trip. And taking notes. Again, I have to take lots of notes after meetups and conferences. I also need to make an effort to keep the benefits of networking alive even after the event. So I usually leave with a ton of notes and reminders to follow up with others, finding ways to ask more questions. So giving it a couple weeks, because usually people get back to their daily life and there's a ton of emails and meetings and calls to make and all that stuff. But give it a couple weeks and then make a point to follow up with the connections that you made and the people that you met when you were at these networking events. So, one of the things I do naturally now, but I had to work really hard at it at the beginning, is to write down a few people, their contact information, and a quick summary of the conversation we had, and maybe a question or two that I could follow up with them after the event. Again, it comes more naturally to me now, but at the beginning, I really had to make an effort. So this can look something like my notes would say, Donna, ask her about her staffing structure. John, we had an interesting conversation about milk. Follow up with him to see how he deals with milk shortages and how they document that or how they train their staff on milk shortages. Ray, he seems like he said he was using a new software, and I want to really know more about that. Maybe he can do a demo for me. I'm going to check in with him in a couple of weeks and see if he can set that up. Amanda and we talked about reporting. She's looking to get this information about her center performance. And I think I actually have a solution that might help her. We went through the same challenge a year ago. So I'm going to offer up this solution and see if that will work for her. So those are the notes I take away from the session. And then, in a couple of weeks, following up with those to keep the conversation going. It takes an effort. But the effort is so very much worth it. All right. A little bit more about connecting with others. Again, we've touched on some of these, but I can expand on it a little bit more. Finding ways to stay connected in your community. Who are the other sponsors or providers or people that do what you do in other areas of your community? Offer to meet in person, or virtual coffee visits are still a thing, even years after COVID. So take advantage of that opportunity and reach out just to talk. And a state agency is a good way to find those connections if you're not sure where to start. State agencies can help. That was my first connection, was going to a state training, and ask your consultant for more information on any in-person meetings that they know about, or even virtual meetings. That is still a great way to stay connected. And trainings. Be honest, if I'm being totally honest, the first few trainings I went to, I showed up. I got there right before the training started. I sat by myself. I left as soon as it was over. I didn't talk to other people. I didn't ask any questions. And now that I look back at it, I realize what a lost opportunity it was. That was my first chance to connect with others and start to build that network. It is so hard and so uncomfortable at times. I completely recognize it, but that's what we're all there for. And you may be reaching out to somebody else who's struggling the same way. So be the first to make the connection, and it may last too. Amazing lifelong friendships. Social media is another way. We talked about that earlier today, but there's some great groups on Facebook that people post questions on. Again, I didn't want to promote one or the other. You have to find what works best for you. But if you just go on Facebook and search for CACFP connections organizations, LinkedIn is another great way as you find people with CACFP experience in their profiles. I've absolutely reached out to people and said, hey, I see that you have this experience in this market. I would love to set up a time to chat. Are you available? And get some mixed results, but that's okay. You got to put yourself out there to be able to make the connections. Log in, ask questions, and see where you can be beneficial as well. Again, keeping in mind it's a two-way street. Talking about CACFP organizations, either directly CACFP organizations or organizations that support CACFP experts, training and areas of expertise. So you're here at ICN. This is an amazing organization that helps promote the education for CACFP and makes connections. A few others that are out there, the National CACFP Forum, the CACFP Roundtable, National Sponsors Association, Homegrown. There are so many. Again, I didn't want to provide any specific links because there are so many out there. I know some state agencies, there are state level. In the past, Texas has had a sponsoring organization. Virginia's had a sponsoring organization that meet more locally. So just start reaching out. Talk to your state agency, talk to other providers in your state, and see where their connections are. I've mentioned conferences in the past. This has become the highlight of my year because there are several conferences throughout the year that are associated with these organizations that I've mentioned before, but even more, like I said, at the state level. And so much can happen. So many connections could be made at a conference. Don't be discouraged by the fact that there might be travel, that there might be a cost associated with it. I know there are a lot of scholarships out there. So breaking the ice, I mentioned it as well, but it is hard to do sometimes. Successful networking, there's no way around it. Successful networking requires you to talk to other people. For some of us, that can be super uncomfortable. It definitely was for me at the beginning. Simple conversation starters can be a really good way that lead into genuine connections and even longer lasting relationships and friendships. I see people attend conferences just like me when I attended my first date trainings. They sit at a table where no one else is sitting. They come to a session right before it starts, leave right when it's in, no questions, no talking. I know social anxiety is a real thing. It's a real challenge, and it can be incredibly difficult to talk to others that you don't know. However, uh, if you see me, come say hi to me. I would love to talk to you. I often try and remind myself many people feel just as uncomfortable as I did my first few times attending these events. And most people are always more worried about themselves and what's going on in their own minds versus what I'm saying to them. So just take that moment to get the conversation started and see where it goes. Um, I wanted to share a few conversation starters because, again, if it's uncomfortable, it's hard to get started. But it is very, once you get going and you feel the right connection with somebody, it'll take off. You won't need any more conversation starters. But it's always helpful to ask, how did you get involved with? If you're talking about the CACFP, that's great. If it's a specific organization, ask about that. But how did you get involved with the work that you're doing today? How do you stay connected and current? I actually asked that one and a few of these during interviews with employees. How do you stay current on rules and regulations, trends, whatever is the hot topics of the program? So ask people how they stay connected and current. When you have questions, where do you turn? I love asking that question of people who I see as experts in the CACFP. I want to know where they go to for their sources of information when they get stumped. Who do they turn to? And then where do you go for inspiration? It's always fun to hear what people have to share. And as I mentioned before too, we want to go beyond just kind of the basic conversation. We want to build real lasting connections. And to do so, it's being authentic. You want to dig a little deeper. You want to really engage people in meaningful discussions. And so instead of just, what do you do? How about asking things like, what was the most valuable or important part of the work that you do, and how does it have an impact on others? What problems do you want to try and help solve for others? And what aspects of your work do you enjoy most and why? So just engaging in those conversations will take it more from a, hey, how you doing today? Down to really meaningful connections that may spur better connections and networking that you didn't even realize was an option. Instead of asking, what's your current role? You can ask, what roles and positions have led you to where you are today, and which ones have taught you the most? Instead of asking, where are you from? That's a common question. Or maybe even building on, where are you from? After that, follow up with, what places have you lived and traveled through your careers and studies? And which ones have had the biggest impact on you? Which ones were your favorite? Tell me why. Digging into those things really help build those authentic connections and friendships. I could not talk about networking as I was thinking about this workshop and the topic itself. I could not talk about networking without sharing some of my amazing network with you. When I look at these pictures, I think back, well, first of all, I'm just truly blessed to have um, such amazing connections with strong people, amazing experts in the CACFP community, most of which started as strangers in a room or strangers on a webinar or strangers at a conference up on a big stage that I was super intimidated by. And now they are some of my truly closest friends. Um, for the first few years when I was attending those conferences, I would listen to women on the stage and men who shared their passion and their experience. Some of them had more years of experience than I had been alive at that time. It's been a while, but um, I was just amazed, like starstruck, CACFP starstruck to be around these amazing people and to hear their stories and to be motivated by them. And the more I showed up, the more I asked questions, the more I just kept putting myself out there, I got to talk to them, be introduced to them. I volunteered to be part of national organizations and to be a member and then to be a board member. And it didn't always hear yes. I actually got rejected several times, but I kept trying and I kept showing up and I kept talking to the people who at first I was intimidated by. And again, there are some pretty impressive CACFP lifers on this page that I'm so blessed to call friends, but they started out as networking opportunities. And these are people I can reach out to at any time. Some of them I reached out to as I was putting together this topic and the discussions and getting their tips and advice because they do it so well. And if I get stuck at work, if I have a problem, if I have a new CACFP challenge that I haven't run into before, I don't worry about it. I have so many people I can reach out to. It's amazing. Okay, we are winding down the content, and I want to make sure that this webinar is useful for you and that you're able to put it into action instead of just listening. You may have been listening and multitasking. It's okay. I'm guilty oftentimes of doing the same thing, but I want to make sure this is useful time that you've spent in the last 40 minutes so far. So take just a couple of minutes, grab a piece of paper and a pen. And instead of just adding it to your list of to-dos, later I'll go back and review it, later I'll go do some of the action items Jody said, let's just jot down a few notes together right now in the next couple of minutes. Do it now, you'll save yourself some time. Because I know I have a huge to-do list later as well. So if I take action now, it'll make it even easier later. So in the next couple of minutes, we're going to write down your steps and I'll give you some ideas. So there are no wrong answers. I'm even going to give you the answers or hopefully give you some ideas that prompt your own answers. So first, in the next 3 years, what are your career objectives? What do you want to accomplish? That's super important. Remember, we talked about not just networking to network, but networking to advance your career goals. So jot down a couple of career goals that come to mind. They could be things like understanding how other sponsors or providers operate or implement something in the CACFP. Find efficiencies within my own program. I want to reduce paperwork. I want to expand access to more providers and children. I want to create better training for my teachers and my providers. Maybe I want to introduce healthier meals on our menus and find ways to add new meals and options that we haven't had before. Maybe I want to learn more about how the states implement the federal regulations and the difference between the state and the federal regs and where there's room to influence. How do I get involved at that level and become more of a CACFP advocate? And I want to join a state or national organization that promotes CACFP because I believe that this is the most amazing program and I want to get the word out. So take a minute, I'll pause to jot down one of these or one of your own career objectives, 2 or 3 even, that you want to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 years. As you're jotting that down, now we're going to connect our networking goals in ways that will advance those career goals. So some of these examples could look like, and make a list of both short and long-term things that you could do right away and break things down into little steps. If you write down something huge like join the board of a national organization, that's amazing, but that takes a couple of steps to get there and it's easy to put it off for a while. So do both. write down some of those aspirational long-term goals, but also write down some quick and easy steps that you can take today or this week that move you towards that goal. So break things down into the next easy step. So both short-term and long-term goals. Identify opportunities through my state agency to connect with providers in the community. Attend a state training. The short version might be ask my state for some resources, ask my state when they're doing the next training. That's an easy step to do. You can send that quick email today. Identify state and national organizations that promote CACFP. That's super easy. Just do that quick Google search. I've mentioned several names here today. Maybe a quick action is sign up for their newsletter. Take 10 minutes to review their website and see how they connect. Another short-term goal is solidify connections with my local CACFP resources. Maybe there's somebody out there that you know about and you just need to schedule time with them. Go offer to meet them for coffee or do a virtual coffee. Little step today. Some long-term networking goals could be to solve a problem that you've been facing at work using connections you've made through CACFP, right? That's a long-term goal, but you got to make those connections to get there. Find a mentor or 3 to establish regular connections and regular touch bases and support. And it could be in person or virtually. Everything is virtual nowadays. There are no limits to location. Another long-term goal could be joining an organization or a board, participating in a national CACFP campaign. Plenty of those are coming up with the elections happening. Lots of opportunities to educate our state and federal representatives. There's always a call to action through our organizations and getting involved. So finally, the strategies that will build your connections. So after this webinar, what's that one or what are those 2 or 3 things you're going to do? Maybe it's reach out to 3 people that I already know who work in CACFP and ask them a couple of questions. Like I mentioned before, sign up for a newsletter, sign up for another training through ICN or the forum or the roundtable or the National Sponsors Association, homegrown. There are so many out there. Go find one, sign up, get connected. Searching social media we talked about, registering for a conference. And like I said, there are plenty of scholarships out there. And then participating in those national campaigns, as I mentioned. There are lots to do. Break it down into the next easy step. And as I mentioned, I would love to say hi the next time you're at a conference. Please, please, please come up and introduce yourself. I'd love to be part of your networking efforts. And with that, I think we're going to open it up for some questions and answers.
Thanks, Jody. Those are all such good tips. I especially like the meaningful conversation starters. Sometimes we just need to flip our questions around in a different way to make it a little more open-ended. And so that was all really good information. And I'm just going to share with the audience the opportunity that I had to meet you. I was at a conference. I'd heard Jody's name repeated by several staff at ICN. You were on the advisory council before I ever came along. And so when we were talking about CACFP expertise, your name was repeated, and I never got the opportunity to actually meet you face to face. I just knew your name. And I was at a conference and I was coming through and they were having a bonfire. It wasn't really a bonfire. It was sort of a little fire thing out on the patio. And I went out there and a mutual friend introduced us. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're Jody. So it was nice to meet you in the person. And so from there, we created a networking opportunity. And then when we were looking at webinars, I reached out to say, hey, would you be interested in doing this? So it's the power of networking, and this the beauty of being vulnerable and just honest with the situations, and just we all struggle with things, and I think sometimes when we are real in our challenges, we can find someone who could really do some peer-to-peer mentoring to help us get better at our challenges, because we're all better together. So I was excited for that opportunity, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not went outside my comfort zone, because this was an after hours event. Nothing was going on. I would not have been able to do that had I not just said, I'm just going to go out here and see what all's going on. So I just lots of information. I've gleaned so much knowledge from you, and I'm so excited about that. If you guys have questions, we have time to answer some. I have a few here. I can't afford to attend a conference. Let's be honest. Sometimes those conferences are really expensive. And when you talk about the cost of travel, do I have to drive? Am I flying? Hotels are expensive. Are there other options for networking if I can't attend a conference?
Such a good question. And the first thing I would say is don't eliminate the possibility of conferences. I know it can be very intimidating, and some of the locations are like they look huge and overwhelming at times, but I know so many of those conferences offer up scholarships. I mentioned it earlier, but it's such an important thing to don't just dismiss it offhand because it looks like a big deal, or maybe you're not a person who travels very much. Don't dismiss it without looking into those scholarships. I know the organizations who put on conferences want to get as many attendees as possible, especially those who don't normally travel to conferences. So reach out to them, look on their websites for information about scholarships, reach out to their conference coordinators, ask them for what's available. I know they want to help make that information, that experience, that opportunity available for as many people as possible. Also check out, because some of those conferences have virtual connection opportunities outside of just the conference. So I know there are virtual meetups at times associated with those groups. Again, reach out to the conference coordinators and say, this is my challenge. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. They may have some very creative ideas for you. So you got to put in a little effort, but there's a lot of benefit out there. And then again, starting with your state agency, they may have ideas that are local as well that wouldn't cost as much.
Good answer. So I'm new to CACFP. I'm not even sure where to start. I'm so overwhelmed. What do you recommend?
Oh my gosh. I know. I can't stress enough talking to your state. They can be a great resource for what's there and available. And then also just other sponsors or other providers in your state, ask them where they went. Where did they start from when they got started? Who did they go to? Where did they work with? So that's really the best place, is to get started there. And then if you do a Google search for CACFP organizations, these organizations are made up of the most caring, amazing, educated experts in the CACFP, and they also want to help get you connected in the right way. Worst case, reach out to me. I'll see you at a conference, or I'm happy to help get people connected.
And likewise, you can always reach out to me. I will find someone that will help you in your local area. So I love connecting people. Do you have any LinkedIn tips? Anything that you think is like a really good thing starting out? And maybe I don't have a profile, or I don't really know what to identify. What are some of your tips that you use?
For LinkedIn, yeah, I am probably not the best LinkedIn expert, but it has helped me a lot. First of all, it's just building out my profile. And it's so easy to use to help just put in your work experience, use the keywords like CACFP, child nutrition, the type of work that you do. And then I have used it to connect with other people. So I have used it as searching for other people's profiles who do similar work to me, and then reaching out to them saying, hey, I noticed that you have this experience. I have similar experience, or I'm looking for that type of experience. Would you be willing to connect? So do start out with a profile that describes what you do, because as you're engaging people or asking for people to engage with you, they're going to check out your profile too. But it's really just straightforward, simple, kind of like your resume, what you do at work, and what your areas of interest are in. It can be very overwhelming. I know you could put in your education and references and all kinds of things. You don't have to do it all 100%. Just your most recent work experience, enough to have a profile so people feel comfortable that there's a real person behind the question when you're reaching out to them.
Good stuff. Another thing that I've noticed a lot with the conferences that I've attended are the conference apps and the opportunity to interact with other people and network with those. I've gotten lots of good connections with just people who've attended sessions or they know I'm with the Institute and they ask child nutrition questions. So don't be afraid to use that app. It's a great app. And I'm not going to name the names, but if you're at a conference, you know the app that they use. But don't be afraid to put yourself out there and offer a coffee break or, hey, let's meet up for a quick walk around the block. So don't be afraid to do that.
Oh,
Another
that's such a
question.
good advice. Yes,
I
definitely.
love those apps. I wish I love apps, and I think I love apps on your phone and appetizers at restaurants. And so
Same.
I think everyone should take advantage of those. So another question that we have coming in is, I guess, and I hope I answer or asking the question correctly. How do you look for vendors? Can you give any tips on like networking with the vendors that you use? What have you done as far as like outside of just building professional network, but networking with the people who can help benefit your program?
That's a great question too. I need to think about that for a minute. So the
Sure.
first part is um, asking other providers who they use. So this is how I'm thinking and interpreting the question, thinking about and interpreting the question. We use vendors for food service. We use vendors for software. That's really where it's applied for CACFP. So the first thing I did was I talked to other people to hear about what they were using, both programs who were similar to mine and very different, because sometimes you get stuck in a rut with the same people using the same things and you want to be a little creative or think outside the box. So interview people. Who do you use? Who do you use? Who do you use? And then you can do some searches to see who competitors are for that program. I will also say conferences are a great place to be able to see different vendors. Again, a couple of the conferences have vendor booths that are set up so you can see what they're advertising. They oftentimes do workshops about their product, especially the software vendors, but also food vendors and supplies and training vendors. I mean, there are so many out there that conferences are a really great place to see who is knowledgeable, because if you're picking a vendor, you want to make sure they know about the CACFP. You don't want to pick somebody who you have to educate all the time. And so if they're attending those conferences and they're showing up as a vendor with a vendor booth, they're probably pretty knowledgeable, and you can hear what they have to share there too. So another reason to attend that conference.
Awesome. It looks like we don't have any more questions. So key takeaways, create a plan, speak to people, step outside your comfort zone, and find me and Jody at any conference you go to, and we'll be your friends. So thanks again for your gift of time today, Jody, and also for our participants in their gift of time. We appreciate all that you guys do, and whatever your goals were on your networking plan, I hope that you guys are successful in that, and we hope to see you somewhere soon, virtually or in person. And always reach out if you guys need anything. ICN's here to help. Have a great day.
Cool.